I've cut out 2 pieces of plywood, 6 inches, that's 150 millimeters, by 3 inches, which is 75 millimeters, and this stuff's about, I'm going to say 1/4 inch thick or thereabouts, close to that. If you haven't got any of this thickness, if you've got 2 thinner pieces, you could glue 2 pieces together, and I've actually got 2 of these, one for the top and one for the bottom of the luggage rack. And now I've put a line all the way around, about 1/2 inch in from the edge, could be a little bit more, and I'm going to drill 4 holes, 1, 2, 3, 4 as mounting holes on the outside, or I could put them on the inside here, which might be even better. So I might move them into about here and then drill them. The idea is that wherever the rail is, it misses the rail and goes down just inside it or just outside of it, so that you get a good solid lock on the luggage rack. I'm using these 1/4 by about 1.5 inches long bolts. They've got the square head on the back here like coach bolts, so there's no way of adjusting them, so they lock into the wood. And the way you do it is you drill 1/4 inch first, which I've done through both pieces at the same time so they all line up. And to make sure that they get them right way around, I put what they call witness on the pieces of wood like that, so you won't turn the wood round. You use pencil normally, I just did it with the markers so that they're a bit more stand out. Drill the holes on this side. I put them just inside of where the metal tubes run across for the luggage rack. One will go here, the other one will go here, and make sure when you do this you allow a bit extra for the half the thickness at least of the drill. They don't have to be right up against the bar. They want to be inside it, but you don't want to be drilling so you're right against it. And I've come about 1/2 inch. You could go a bit more than that as well in this way if you want to. And having drilled through both of them, I've then gone through with this step drill, and I'm using the 1, 2, 3 up, and that's created a little depression in the wood. Oops, they're swinging away from me. Let me pull these back into order. So that I've created that little depth, extra wide hole in there, which will allow for this little square step to sit in there and bite. If you want to make sure they stay in there, just put some glue on there. Use an industrial adhesive, any sort will work, or you can mix up some epoxy, and then I'm going to put these in from underneath so that these stay on the bottom board. Probably I might change my mind on that depending on how well I can make it fit the rack. If these won't go underneath the rack, then I'll think again, but my initial thoughts is to put some glue on these. But if I don't, I should be able to pull these all the way up or push them down to give me clearance when I'm going through the rack, and then pull them up again, and this little square section here will cut its own little square box in the bottom of this piece, which will be put on the other way around, and this is going to be the bottom board eventually, and we'll see how it goes. Here we go now. For decorative purposes, I'm going to use one of these large washers here, place it close to this edge and that edge, draw around with a pencil, do that on all 4 corners of both pieces, and then just trim that off and sand it. You could do it with a saw, a file, any way you like. I happen to have a little bandsaw here, so I'm going to use that, and then I'll finish it off with some glass paper, sandpaper and a file to just make it rounded and look nice, no sharp edges. I used a black marker pen just so that it stands out more, so I could show you on the video, but I just put the washer there. You don't put it right to the edge, you leave about between a 1/16 and an 1/8 to allow for the saw cut, but you want to finish coming out onto the flat on each one. So mark each one on each of these, and then I'll do the same on the bottom one, and I'm going to cut them out. Now I've cut the 4 corners out round on the bandsaw, and I want to make them both the same, so I'm going to put them both using the witness marks on the side to just continue, and I'm going to hold this in place and use these shapes so that they both look the same, even though if they're not exactly round, they'll be identical. There we have the two pieces cut out. The witness marks are on the same side, and the corners should be fairly close. Now what I'm going to do is just put them in a vise and just sand around here. If you've got a electric sander, a belt sander or orbital, you can just roll these around, or you can do it old school with a block of wood and some glass paper or sandpaper, whichever you prefer to call it. It used to be sandpaper when it was first invented, but they use glass these days, so or a silicon type of something. Anyway, so now I've got those. I'm just going to tidy that up, sand it down a bit. Eventually I can paint this, and I'll probably spray it black to match with everything else and just clean it up. But it's almost ready for assembly. I'll assemble it first, and then if it works I'll take it apart, and then I'll spray it a few coats with some black. I've oversized these holes using the step drill. Went up to this one, so that these are a nice easy fit. I don't want to have to struggle taking them off and on, so they go on very easy. There's a little bit of play there, and so they'll all fit comfortably. The other sides, these little square sections will slot down into the little extra size holes that I did about halfway through using a step drill, and then I used the same step drill position and came all the way through these particular ones. So they've been sanded, cleaned up, just a little bit of finishing to do before I spray them. But next I'm going to put them on and work out where the ball mount has to fit, and then I'll drill the holes for that next. I've slid the bottom piece underneath from the back here, just slid it through. Make sure when you do that you pull these screws up as far as they will, so they're not rubbing onto your plastic of your trunk cover. And then this one, you can wiggle them around. And then next I'm going to put some wing nuts on here and tighten them down just to pull these bolts fully up. I'll put a washer probably on each one of these, and then a wing nut. The idea is then I can take this off when I want to, although I'll have to see how that goes, because once I get this mounted on here, that may have to come off first, so maybe I have to wing nut that or something, but we'll see about that. It may stay on there permanently, it may not. Even if it stays on there, it's not going to stick up too much. So we'll see how it goes. This is like make it up as you go along, but that's the way these things work. I've now got the two plates, one on the top, one on the bottom. I've temporarily screwed the wing nuts on here. I haven't bothered with the washers yet because I'm not going to do them up that tight. But what I wanted to make sure is that I've got clearance under here. And I think if you look, you can see probably that there is clearance here and there and right the way through the back. I don't know if I can capture it all, but you can probably see through most of them. But there's nothing. There we go, that's not bad. So I want this to sit on here with the base of the clamp, which is specially designed for this particular Insta360 extension pole. I want it to sit against this back tube to sort of reduce some of the shaking at the top end if I extend it. So what I've done is I've put it on, eyeballed where it should be, put a pencil through, mark the holes. Now I'm going to drill the holes there, and I'll put some screws in, and I'll try and do it in a way that I put them into the from below again, and then they'll be fairly flush. And then when I take this top plate off, the whole bracket should lift off, and then the bottom one can come out without interfering with anything else. Hope that's staying in focus. There we are. I drilled out one hole from the marks I put on when I eyeballed it, and then I drilled one and I put a countersunk screw here just because I happen to have some like that. You could use pan heads, and I put a wing nut on here, and these are probably 3/16. So I put one in, drilled it, and then used that to hold it, adjusted this so I had it pretty well parallel to the sides, drilled it on here, and then put a second bolt and wing nut on, and then I drill the last two once those two are in. These two hold it in place. I use wing nuts that you could be taken apart. I'm going to put some Loctite on there on the threads just so that they don't vibrate loose. And if I can reach it, I'm just going to reach over here. There we go. You can use the usual Loctite. You can also get this Loctite 222, which is a slightly lower strength one, which will hold the thread but won't make it hard for you to release it when you have to. So I like this stuff. I got this one at Harbour Freight, but you can buy it online, I'm sure, at Amazon. And again, if I find it, I'll put a link to it in the description. You don't need to have a pillar drill or this sort of thing. By the way, I just happen to have a little workshop, so I do it on here. But if you've got just an electric hand drill, you do exactly the same thing. Use a block of wood, rest it on, drill one hole, put the nut and bolt through, nut and wing nut if you want, and then drill the second one out once you've lined it up, and with the drill obviously in the hand drill, and then do the other two once you've got the second screw in there with its locking nut or wing nut on the back, and then finally just put these two on, and that's ready to go. Now I'm going to test all this before I paint it, so it will go out for a ride, and I'll just make sure everything works so that it's fine. This piece of plywood I use happens to be marine plywood. I had just an offcut kicking around from some boat building or hovercraft building that I did some years ago, but any plywood will do. Exterior ply is very good. What you really want to make sure is that it's got at least 3 layers of plywood in there, minimum of 3. 5 is even better. But if you've got, this is 1/4 of an inch, if you haven't got anything that's as thick as this, you can use 2 pieces of like 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 and put some glue on them, and you can even run the grain in opposite directions to make it stronger. But this is plenty strong enough to support the weight, even if I extended the InstaiStick out the full 10 foot or 10 feet. So yeah, this is almost ready for testing. I've applied some Loctite to the thread. I just put it at the end because I'm going to loosen these off, but you can put it on the thread first and then wind them in so that it goes right through into the thread. But I just want to lock it so that it won't allow them to vibrate themselves off. And it's the 222 I used because that's a slightly lower strength. It'll do the job, but it will be possible to loosen it off more easily. I've applied the Loctite 222 to these wing nuts also. I'll be loosening them all off to fit the washers underneath later after I've taken it apart and sprayed the wood parts to make them black, to partly waterproof them but also make them blend in. And that's ready now to put the clamp on. So I've got the InstaiStick here with its mount. This one came with the bracket there. There's a special little hole in the end here inside one of these. There's a pin on the InstaiStick that goes into a hole into the clamp, or the other way around, and so then when I put this on here I can mount it on and I can adjust the angle in whichever way I want to go, and ideally I'll probably lean it back a little bit so that it's able to sort of capture a little bit height and then forward as well. I'm going to set it up so it's behind the passenger's head initially, and we'll see how that works. So there it is. I've mounted it on the luggage rack. If I shake it, everything moves with the luggage rack, and it will rock forward a little bit. So I put a bungee around here. I might put the bungee a little bit higher up around here and then around this, just to keep this firmly down onto here. I'm going to put some rubber or some elastic like this around underneath so that it doesn't just keep hammering on there. But I think if I move the bungee cord up a little bit higher here, it will actually hold it down even better. So we'll try that out next. So this is what it looks like, fully assembled onto the luggage rack. I think it's worked out really well. A little bit of minor adjustment required probably when I set it up the next day, just to get my helmets and the microphone systems set up, but I'm very pleased with that. I think that's going to work very well.